I'm that guy who comes back into town and tries to pick on the Miz, and we're like, we don't do that. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
we don't pick on the Miz. He's a legend. I'm like, what, this guy? He fucking stinks.
This is the SmarkZ podcast. There is one of us here who is quite the Smark,
Hey.
and there's one who I think has the potential to be maybe an even better Smark. But right now, they bask in the realm of Markdom.
Sort of a small Smark.
Small Smark.
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 Smark, nonetheless.
But for those of you who don't know us, which will be most people at this point, my name is Stephen. I've been a wrestling fan for, I'm going to say roughly 21, 22 of my 27 years of life. And I will say most of those have been pretty grueling.
Difficult times.
Very, very difficult times. I would argue that a lot of those times were kind of the years where you weren't watching, which obviously I think we're going to touch on a lot of those.
Yeah,
but
that's pretty much the purpose of the podcast. It sort of like was the forming bond of our friendship was realizing that we had a mutual interest in wrestling, a deep interest, not just like, you know, fans of the wrestling itself, but you know, what goes on behind the scenes, and you know, the real drama of wrestling, mainly WWE. But yeah, also my gap. So as my fandom goes, I would say I've been an on and off fan for most of my life, like probably starting from when I was about 6 or 7. But yeah, we'll get into it deeply. But yeah, there's a big gap in my wrestling fandom where I just sort of tuned out. I just didn't really stay involved, stay engaged. And then life just sort of caught up with me, and I just ended up not really knowing what the hell had been going on story-wise in wrestling. Who was the big names? What happened to all my favorites? And yeah, who the hell is Roman Reigns? You know,
that is the question all of us ask, and unfortunately, WWE continues to let us know who he is.
Make us acknowledge him.
I do it every time, but he still doesn't go away. But when was it that you kind of tuned out?
So I'd say it's somewhere along the lines of I'd say roughly around 2008. I'd say like my knowledge and memory sort of goes a bit rough between 2006 to 2008. Like to the point I can't actually like tell you what the last like storyline I sort of remember was. Like, you know, I see people and I recognize them, and like I'm surprised at how long they've been in wrestling, and I'm like, I don't really remember them too well. You know, I'd say for me to put a name to it, I'd say it's sort of the rise of CM Punk would be where I sort of dropped out. I sort of missed. I saw early Punk, but like he really was like not on my radar.
Yeah, he was like. There was no indication. Obviously, good on the mic. He could put on a match, but he wasn't like the star. You can tell that just because he was on ECW. So they're not going to put someone who they think is going to be the be all end all on ECW.
Yeah,
but
ECW, man.
I think CM Punk is one of those guys who kind of, in that time you went away, shaped the product in the sense that everyone at the time was clamoring for the return of the Attitude Era. And we didn't get that. And we will never get that. And you have to let it go.
It's gone. Dead. Okay.
Dead.
Stone Cold is dead.
Even though he had a match last year.
Come on.
It was fucking good.
Was it?
It was good.
I haven't watched it.
It had Kevin Owens in it. It was fucking great.
Oh, man. Kevin Owens is an interesting one. We'll get into him a little bit, because actually I have an interesting story on like how I know about Kevin Owens, and actually it's like sort of ties into like I suppose my second coming of wrestling, like when I started to dip back in, and it was a very interesting way. Ooh. But we'll get into that. Like I think sort of I know. I feel like our origin. We should flesh out ourselves and who we are. Who, you know. I think I thought about this and I wanted to ask you because I don't know this. What is your earliest memory in terms of like a story or feud when you actually got into wrestling? Like, is there like what was like the first sort of storyline you remember?
That's an interesting one. And it's one I've got a very specific answer to because it's a comment that my sister made. Uh, I would say around 2001 or so, there was a feud where Matt Hardy was feuding with Dean Malenko. And
Okay.
it was over Lita.
Yeah, I'm so surprised because obviously when I'm older than you, and there's definitely gonna be crossover of when we were watching wrestling at the same time. So like you would have been younger than me.
I would have been
watching.
5.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, because I would have been like 9 at this point. So not that like I really had a solid grip on what was really going on at wrestling at that point. I was still very much invested. Like I knew it was fake, but like I was still invested almost like the same way I was invested in like EastEnders at the time. Like
It's occurring, you know?
it was real enough for me. Like so yeah, so Dean Malenko and Matt Hardy fighting over. If I recall, Lita was fought over by between quite a few guys, actually, now recalling that, because
Yeah.
I believe she also was fought over by Kane and Edge.
Not just Kane and Edge. Kane and Edge came second.
Was it also Edge and Matt Hardy at one point?
Edge and Matt Hardy. Oh God, I can't believe that the worst of the 3 is the one that I thought of first. There's another one still in this.
There's still another.
And this is all in the space of 1 year.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
We're forgetting the mighty Gene Snitsky.
I thought it was going to be Gene. I was like, I feel like Gene's in here somewhere. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
On a first name basis with old Gene Snitsky.
Now, almost immediately, I want to dip into like the behind the scenes of this. I will tell you my earliest memory, but I sort of realized I was talking about this earlier with you. Like, obviously, in the real life, outside of the kayfabe, Lita had been in a relationship with Matt Hardy, and had actually like had an affair with Edge, I believe.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they decided, rather than finding some amicable way to, be professional and keep these things separate. No, they wrote this into the stories. They're like, you know what? Let's punish this woman by having her have to live this in real life and have these men wrestle over her honor.
Yeah. Lita, Amy, I know you've got that really tremendous wrestling ability. I know you've laid the way for all these women wrestlers, but we're going to take that away from you. You're going to be a valet for Edge, and then your final appearance is going to be Crime Time coming out and throwing your lingerie on the stage and calling you a whore.
Oh my days, you can't even make this up.
No.
No.
So, I'm not surprised that you stopped watching around 2006 all of a sudden.
Can you imagine? It was like, I think it was when, my mum was like somewhat accepting. She didn't mind wrestling, but I think, she always kept a close eye on what I was watching. And I think, when I first got in, things were like normal enough. She understood. I'm sure she was well aware of it being scripted and all this, the fact that it was basically a stuntman drama show. The storyline started getting a bit weird and a bit deep, and I remember especially the Triple H taunting Kane story. That was, I think that because Kane was my favorite wrestler, so I think my mum watching that was like, what on earth are they letting people watch? Like this is not even like this isn't for children. Like what the fuck is going on here? And yeah, I think I started to deep it a little bit as I got to like 9, 10, and I was like, yeah, some of these are getting a bit odd. Like I sort of just wanted to see my favorite wrestlers like have a normal rivalry. I don't know why people are bringing people's mums quite literally into this. Like,
literally,
people's family members are getting choke slammed. Like what the fuck? Like it's getting crazy.
The worst part is like some of that had entertainment value. Sure, like you see Kane tombstone Linda McMahon. It's like,
oh yeah, that's great. That's great. But
it's great.
I feel like that had like subtle undertones, more subtle undertones. That was more like chaos and like fuck the system. Like yeah, take that Vince and Shane, and yeah, that was funny.
Big Show's dad getting dragged at his own funeral by the big boss man. I can live with that.
That was just peak Attitude Era nonsense, though. That was like, there is no such thing as too far. Like, we're gonna take angles to places you'd never imagined. Like, here's a funeral.
Yeah.
What do you think is gonna happen? We're not just gonna have a funeral play out. We're gonna have the
Yeah.
wrestlers do some crazy shit at a funeral.
You got to send the fans home happy. They're not going to be happy if you just have a normal funeral.
And to think like, as a paying member, like, you know, audience member, like, you're just watching this on screens. You're like, I came here to watch people wrestle, and now I'm watching a funeral like cutscene.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
And the wrestlers, they have such created character energy. Here's the police officer who comes on in his car, and there's the 7-foot man named Paul White who climbs onto the coffin screaming, "Daddy!"
Honestly, like, there are so many insane ideas. I want to get into like my earliest memory, actually. So I sort of recall essentially, and I don't know, maybe I might be wrong because I'm getting old. I'm getting to that point where like I might mix things up, and things I think happened early might have actually been later than I thought. But essentially, I recall Kurt Angle. So I do remember like Kurt Angle sort of debuting, but like I didn't have like constant access. So like,
Mhm.
essentially, you know, I was wanting to watch wrestling, but like it'd be like a month between things, and I didn't really realize that was like I'd missed like 3 matches, and you know,
Yeah.
weekly developments had like, you know, flown by. But essentially, I remember like Kurt Angle sort of getting into his first run, becoming champion, and having a feud with Stone Cold. Uh, and I really remember like I feel like I've realized like I'm having my mind blown at like the depths at which these rivalries were going. That it wasn't just like fights in the ring. Like, I think I recall one or other, like I can't remember who. One had kidnapped the other and like tied them up and like blindfolded them, and made them sing a song, and then make them think they were going to be pushed off a building.
That was. It was either Stone Cold and Kurt Angle or Stone Cold and The Rock.
I think it was because I remember also the like Kurt Angle's medals being a massive part of it.
Yes. Stone Cold, he had this weird thing for throwing things off of bridges. He threw the belts off.
Yes.
And bear in mind, there's like a 3-year gap in all of this. But then he throws the medals off.
Is it the same bridge? Is it the same bridge every time?
The canonic WWE bridge. It's like the SmackDown Hotel. You got WWE throwy bridge.
The bridge.
Take it to the bridge. All of a sudden, fucking Kurt's like, I'm not having that. You're fucking going off. Those medals were my life, so I'm going to literally take your life.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, I remember because that was when like, first of all, that was like he makes Stone Cold cry, which is like, it's like such a hilarious moment. I think like,
yeah,
essentially like for me, because I do recall like most of these characters like development. Like I hadn't seen the early days of Stone Cold, but you know, I'd seen like peak Stone Cold at this point, and like, you know, this is the man that had like broken The Rock, broken Vince McMahon, you know, beaten Triple H, like, and then all of a sudden, Kurt Angle's the man that makes Stone Cold cry.
Yeah.
He gets his revenge and he breaks Stone Cold in that moment. And I was like, damn, this is getting serious. Like, Kurt Angle's the man at this moment. I hated Kurt Angle, for the record. Like, he was someone that, and I think this is going to be like a running theme of this podcast, is like people that it took me so long to come around to. I don't know if it's the same for you, but like Kurt Angle, I think it took me almost 20 years to come around to Kurt Angle.
wow.
Like, I think it was in my second coming of wrestling. You know, I think I might start getting into it a bit, but like obviously, like I said, I dropped off around like 2006, 2008 era. So I'm leaning too much, and I basically was when I was at uni. At some point, you know, just through gaming, we fell into, I think somehow on like Xbox Live, there's free games. One of them was like one of the SmackDown versus Raws, SmackDown versus Raws games, and yeah, and like, you know, a few of us just came out of the woodwork, so we're like, oh yeah, I used to play SmackDown games, I used to watch wrestling, and like, you know, all of us are playing wrestling, and like, you know, I was abusing the fact that Stone Cold's taunt could just be abused, and you can just get your finisher meet up in a second, and you know, that sort of triggered like a few of us talking about wrestling quite a bit. And then my eventual housemate, I think me and him then started having like sort of deep conversations, you know, and like he started asking me questions like, "Do you know about like this person dying and stuff?" Obviously, we talked about Benoit, we talked about Eddie
It's the
Guerrero, we talked
rules.
about China and all this, and you know, we started like, you know, at that point realizing, oh, we can get high and watch like documentaries on Vice and YouTube about wrestlers, and I'd never really done that. Like, I never really, you know, looked that far behind the scenes and like looked into like locker room culture like that. And I think that sort of like convinced me to like not watch wrestling because I still didn't actually start watching WWE properly. I dipped in. I sort of, you know, I think we played like one of the more recent games just for the fuck of it, and like, you know, that's when I was exposed to all these wrestlers I did not know. I was like, who the fuck are all these people?
Did anyone stand out to you at the time
So that was
other than
when
Roman?
No, Roman was someone that I'd like from reading about at around that time, about like a year after. So this would have been about 2014, 2015. And
Oh,
yeah,
like really early doors then.
so and yeah, I think like there was a few people like Cody. I think Cody was someone I dismissed. I found him annoying, and I dismissed him when I saw him in the games and I saw him about him like online. And I was like, "The fuck is Cody Rhodes? What a shit name." Uh, I didn't really clock the lineage of like the Rhodes family at that time. I didn't even know that him and Stardust, Goldust were related because I didn't know Goldust's real name
Right.
at the time. So yeah, for the longest time I was just like, you know, seeing all these people. I sort of feel like I do recall seeing people like obviously like I think one of the main ones would be like Sheamus, like someone like Sheamus, like was just like constantly in the games, and I was just like, who the fuck is this guy? I was like, who the fuck is Sheamus? And I just thought like his character was a shit. I just like he's just a horrendously white ginger man, who's no offense. Listen, my best friend is ginger and white. I'll have you know.
It's fine. You're not saying it with a hard R. It's okay.
It's not even a joke. Not even a joke. Shout out to David. We used to watch wrestling. David also hated Kurt Angle. My earliest memory of us playing wrestling games is him failing to beat Kurt Angle on one of the campaigns on like freaking Here Comes the Pain, and him raging out so hard his mum had a massive go at him because he's just screaming. We're in his bedroom playing games, and he's just getting so mad at Kurt Angle. And his mum comes upstairs, just like, "Will you stop?" And I'm just like, I'm just there, the awkward one, just like, I'm not shouting. You know?
She's just a hidden Kurt Angle mark. She's just in love with
and
you.
honestly, I, you know, I'm sorry, David, for telling this story, but I just remember, you know, we're like 9, and he's just screaming like, "No, mum, you don't understand. I hate Kurt Angle."
He's on so many painkillers.
So
He can't lose.
Oh, this was like before bald Angle as well. This was fully
hair Angle.
Yeah,
He was a different beast.
that's when he was his most annoying, I think, as well.
Well, if we go back to like the story where he throws Stone Cold off the bridge, I think that kind of ties into one of the best things about wrestling for me. And that's the fact that 2 weeks earlier, him and Stone Cold were best friends. They were sitting there in cowboy hats singing Jimmy Crack Corn for Vince McMahon to make him happy. 2 weeks later, it's a murder scene.
It's a murder scene. So yes, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm gonna laugh at it every time I see Benoit in capital letters with
The exuberance of youth. Benoit.
Benoit.
We owe Benoit a lot. He did bring us together. Well, actually, the thing that brought us together was the use of wrestling terminology.
Oh yeah. Actually, that was funny because do you know what's funny? I didn't really know I was doing it. I sort of just said it, you know. And then when you sort of like, I realized you clocked
on.
I was like, oh yeah, I suppose.
I thought you'd kind of just pegged me for a wrestling fan because I look like a wrestling fan.
Yeah, to be fair, I also did just, I suppose, like take a mental note and just assume you understood. We were on that level. And I was like, I'm sure he, you know, just with the way in which you presented yourself as a wrestling fan, like as a bigger wrestling fan than me. So I was like, okay, I'm sure he knows. I'm sure he understands the term green.
Yeah. And I kind of appreciated the fact that even though you'd been out of touch for so long, it had stayed in your heart. Like, because that's the kind of thing that doesn't come from being a childhood wrestling fan. That comes from the shit like watching Cultaholic, watching Dark Side of the Ring,
Yeah.
listening to the Attitude Era podcast. Shout out. They do a really good live show.
Your mic is sinking.
Yeah, I have somehow made this way worse. I just want to be live.
The issues never stop. They never stop.
That's why we have
Shout out to Ishan. We're going to hire you. We need you.
like 2% of the revenue.
Whilst we're getting 0. Let me take this out shut. Oh, I need to see my takeaway. I can't believe this has been here the whole time.
Okay. That might be a bit better. Should we take it from a few lines earlier? Or I'm sweating like a priest in a playground, by the way.
I'm sure we'll find things that work. We can cut around a lot. So what we already sort of touched on, which is you explaining someone I don't really know. Now, I forgot that the first person we had written down was The Miz.
I was thinking of that in the introduction. So thank you for bringing that up so eloquently. I was going to ask, well, I was going to say, because around 2008 or so when you stopped watching, can you remember what he was doing and what was your impression of him at the time?
I honestly only really remember him from the games.
From the games?
Like, yeah, like I don't recall ever really seeing him. He must have been someone I just was ignoring. Or like if I saw him, I just probably didn't care, and I just probably was supporting whoever he was wrestling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just erased him from my memory.
I think between the years of 2006 to 2012, that's what everyone's experience was of The Miz, just supporting whoever he was fighting.
Yeah, poor guy.
But to maybe if we flip that on its head, what's your opinion of him now? What do you know of him now? But also, how do you feel about him now?
Honestly, it's one of those, like, as someone who is sort of trying to be, on the fence, but still supporting some aspects of wrestling. I try not to hate on him, but I still just have that like almost like sour taste with him. I'm just like, I never liked you. And so when he does pop up, like he's sort of treated now as like a veteran, like legend, like guaranteed Hall of Famer sort of level.
Locker room leader, I think they call it.
Yeah, but I suppose for me, it's like he's sort of like I don't know if that's always been his angle, but like he's sort of heel at the moment, and I don't really understand what the scope of his character's been aside from like super arrogant guy.
In the long scheme, or the grand scheme, and the long and short things, that's him.
That's it. He's just arrogant guy. He's just like, hey, I'm awesome. Like, which is again, a tried gimmick a little bit,
but it took a long time to get there. So, very beginning of The Miz came through, and I know you're going to know about this. It's Tough Enough. The Miz was from Tough Enough.
I only ever remember one Tough Enough winner.
Maven.
Of course.
Everyone remembers Maven.
Or Maven.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I saw a video of Maven recently, not too long ago. He looks odd. He looks like a wax doll of Maven. Made by a blind person. I'm sorry, Maven.
Like a wax figure of him who'd been melted by a candle.
Yeah, like because obviously I've not seen the man in 20 years.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh yeah, people age. Damn, like that's how that guy aged. That's it. That's the same with a lot of wrestlers. For the record, like I'm gonna go hot take immediately and be like, listen, Undertaker's not aging well. Like, what did you expect when you dressed like a goth going into your 50s? Like, the dead man look doesn't look cool. It's like Ozzy Osbourne, bro. Like,
Undertaker has like this brilliant thing where he could just let it all go white, and he'd be badass as fuck,
or look like a witch.
That's better than whatever he was doing after the Bray Wyatt match. But if we get back to The Miz, he comes through Tough Enough. Don't think he won. which is it's that weird thing that like you remember back in the day on the X Factor, the winner would never have a good career, but then the person who
Most
came
of them
second,
don't.
no,
Most of them don't. Even those who come second sort of has like a 2 year longer run than the winner. And I think it's almost like in spite of the winner, everyone's like, yeah, actually, fuck the winner, fuck them. Let's support the second place.
yeah,
And then it's like, yeah,
it was
these guys are right.
rigged.
But
It was the X Factor Montreal screw job.
I feel like it's the same thing with Tough Enough. Like I see a lot of wrestlers pop up like, oh, they're from Tough Enough. This person's from Tough Enough, and I'm like, I don't even remember more than like 2 seasons of Tough. How many Tough Enoughs were there? How many people were Tough Enough?
In the original run, I think there was 3 seasons. Then they did a reboot.
They rebooted Tough Enough.
Yeah, with Stone Cold as the host.
Tougher Enough.
The toughest of the nuffs. And I don't think anyone even won that.
No, they just gave up. They're like, you know what? You guys are soft. Like, I'm sorry, but
How can you compete with stars of the current year like John Laurinaitis and The Miz, who was on top of the fucking world at that time? But you get through that Tough Enough era, and all of a sudden, because with The Miz, he came through with like the whole Z-list celebrity style, as in he'd been on TV, done Tough Enough. There's a whole stuff about him being hosts on TV stuff. Might be a bit wrong on that, but the grand scheme of it, I'm right. So he came in with a lot of heat, and he kind of had to work his way up. I think now, if you look at him, you kind of get the idea that actually really confident on the mic, as annoying as it is, the guy's got charisma. You have to if you're going to pull Maurice, you know? But he had none of that. He was a deer in the fucking headlights when it came to like cutting promos, interviewing people, all that shit. So he slowly graduates into a more in-ring role. And his original gimmick was the chick magnet.
so Val Venus 2.0.
No, Val Venus was fun.
Was he? I don't know. He was fun in the 90s.
Yeah.
I actually recently, not trying to go off on another tangent, but I feel like I watched him on 2 sort of like late appearances, and it was just like, oh, this was a thing. I was like, and the worst part is like, I'm now realizing, I was like, I thought the ladies, were actual fans. I'm like, oh no, they just paid women.
Yeah.
It was their job to pretend to be interested in that. No, this sucks.
They used the AEW approach. They paid people to be in the crowd.
I was like, oh shit. Nah, that's not badass at all.
In hindsight, it's obvious because it's like, no woman that hot would be at a fucking wrestling show.
Of course. Now, maybe, but like,
Yeah.
nah, come on. Not in the 90s, early 2000s. Come on, bro. Like, who are you fooling?
Even at its peak, wrestling was for the outcasts. You know, I was going to say the Marilyn Manson fans, but that doesn't really go down well at this point either.
Ooh.
But it's fine.
So Miz was a womanizer.
He wasn't even a womanizer though. His gimmick was he was a massive nerd. His shirts literally just had pictures of chicks with magnets next to them. He was that best friend you had who said, I've got a girlfriend, but she goes to another school.
Oh no.
And it was awful. It was
I can see
absolutely
it.
dreadful.
I can see it.
Because he looks the part. Even now, like, obviously, if you're a big beefy man, you're kind of probably going to look a bit better when you're 40 than when you're a scrawny, like, 20-something. But he still looks like a fucking nerd. No amount of nice suits. Look at me. I'm allowed to say it. No amount of nice suits is going to change that. It's part of his charm, and it's why he's such a good heel. But at the time, because he was so young and so fresh, no one really got the joke. So it just came across as annoying. And that was doubled down with his original catchphrase. What you kind of hinted towards it, but what do you think of the catchphrase, I'm the Miz and I'm awesome?
Yeah, I got nothing. Like, it's not even like cheesy, man. It's like,
No.
it's lazy.
It's vanilla as fuck. It's like egotistical, but without trying.
Yeah, it's almost like someone trying to convince you they're arrogant by being arrogant, but like in all the wrong ways. It's like you're just annoying and persistent, but you're not actually arrogant. You're trying to convince me you're arrogant. You're just irritating.
He's sending you messages on Xbox Live saying, "I'm really good at this game. You'll never beat me, but I'm never going to play you." Well,
1v1 and rage quits.
Yeah. He'll call you nasty names on NBA. But at least with that, you kind of get the idea that like it suits his character. Because he's not that smart, he's not that deep. He's just kind of good on the mic and he's been in the Marine 27. His original catchphrase was 10 million times worse. And what he'd do is he would, for about 20 seconds, walk in a circle around the ring and scream, "Hoorah!" And he would expect everyone else to chant it along with him. And not a single person would.
Was it one of those he thought it's a slow burner? People will get into it eventually. People will hate it at first, but soon they'll find it funny, and then they'll do it and it just never caught on.
It just never caught on. And I don't know if he expected it to, because I feel like he had no idea what the fuck he was doing at that time.
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
I get it. Like, I I've seen the Daniel Bryan story, and I feel like it's almost like there's this I don't know how to describe it. I know there's like a term for it. It's like it's almost like I describe it as like post over. Like you're over with the fans, ironically, and some people almost like look for that. It's almost like, okay, I'm not going to be like the obvious fan favorite. I'm not going to be like the locker room favorite, but eventually I'll be like an ironic fan favorite, like Scotty Too Hotty, and you have to give me a championship, even though I'm just a clown. And I love Scotty Too Hotty. I look back at it now, I'm like, yeah, maybe his and Rikishi's like, late tag team title run was a bit dumb and forced. I was like, they just gave him those titles because it was funny.
But in a way, I feel like there should be a bit more of that.
There should, but at the same time, my point being, there's some people that like, Scotty Too Hotty was like cute, and it was almost like an act of the time that like got old, but people wanted to keep it around, rather than someone who isn't working, but is almost trying to use the fact that their act isn't working to be an angle. And it's like, come on. Like, those things I don't like, because it's like, there's obviously a meta to this, and you can try and use the meta to your advantage, but you got to be smart about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to double down on that, the problem is the meta changes. The meta moves so quickly. So if you're going to do something like that, and you're going to give into the meta for however long it requires, you don't get the chance to do things like the Bloodline storyline, because it requires time, it requires absolute dedication. And as soon as you allow those little meta moments, those little flavor of the month moments to come in, like the Scotty Too Hotties, whatever you want to say, we've just given up a 4-year storyline just so Scotty can do his dance. And we'll have a great time, but not as much as when fucking Roman loses. But tying that back into The Miz.
Let's not get into the Roman thing yet.
We're going to build up
to calling my name. I need to finish it.
Don't fucking blame you. That's why I ate before I came. Because I would just be demolishing a fucking Big Tasty right now. But yeah, I feel like there was that kind of belief that it was never going to work when it came to The Miz and that gimmick. And I knew a guy online because I was big on the internet wrestling community back in 2009, 10. I was in all of the e-feds. I had my created wrestlers online. And there was one guy in particular who I knew. Still know of him. Fairly big on YouTube. He was a big Miz mark. But what I find impressive is what he did is one of the things that they do when you're not working, but they don't want to change your character. They just throw you in a tag team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've noticed that one.
Yeah. They do it now. Fucking Chad Gable and Otis, both of whom were fucking working, by the way, pushed Chad Gable. Um,
Ricochet and Strowman.
yep, that was mainly just a punishment for fucking Braun Strowman though, for saying that flippy people are cunts. But do you know who they put him in a tag team with, Miz?
Only because I feel like it's a name that I recall, but I'm not sure. Is it Big Show?
No, Big Show was in a tag team with everyone else.
Miz
Yeah.
Show never happened.
It did happen, but it was later. You are the Smark, I am the Mark. But Big Show was in it. You had Jericho, Miz Show, all of them.
You know, I was like, Big Show's on everything. So I was like, he
Yeah.
must have been in a tag show with Big Show at some point. Miz Show,
Yeah.
come on.
I mean, Big Show was in a tag team with The Undertaker. He was in a tag team with The Undertaker rather than Kane. But it was actually John Morrison.
John Morrison. I want to get into John Morrison at some point because he is a fucking bizarre character.
Yeah.
My God, like what was going on with him?
Well, I don't know.
Like
he's big in those circles we're talking about, like being that post over status. He's been there. He's an indie darling. And people have always said to him, give him a run with a title. I never really got the hype. He's just boring as fuck. And it doesn't help that he's trying to be Jim Morrison. And the doors are fucking boring as well.
Ah, yes. I'm not even arguing that one.
we have come together to swear off the doors.
Yes. Let's upset everybody. No.
Velvet Underground supremacy.
But I feel like we're... Oh, no, yeah. So saving The Miz by putting him with John Morrison. Okay, how did that go?
It actually, looking back on it, was quite innovative.
Oh, God. By God, it worked.
It should not have worked. But it was, I'm going to say it was around 2009, 2010. So we're about 3 or 4 years into his like main career. And this was kind of at that era where they were actually doing stuff online. So Miz and Morrison had their own online show.
Oh, fuck.
And it was Fred quality. It was fucking Shane Dawson quality. And that's why it worked. Because they're heels, you know? You kind of laugh at them as opposed to with them. So whenever they're doing their white boy impressions of R-Truth, in a non-racist way, I promise.
Are you? Is it non-racist?
So while they're doing their R-Truth impressions,
it's WWE. Let's be honest.
yeah, Vince booked this shit, so it's probably racist. It kind of caught on in that ironic humor way where everyone's just like, you like someone who can laugh at themselves.
True. Those characters do work, and like, 'cause I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying my experience of The Miz just made it. I think having probably not seen his developments make it harder for me to harder for him to win me over. I think I'm just like sort of like I think I saw the beginning and the end, and I'm just like, why is everyone like this guy now? Like I thought we hated this guy. We're not bullying him still. I'm that guy who comes back into town and tries to pick on The Miz, and we're like, we don't do that. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
we don't pick on The Miz. He's a legend. I'm like, what, this guy? He fucking stinks.
You look at The Miz, but he's got this PTSD glare in his eye. It's like, oh, he has been through some shit.
I'm like, okay. I was like, but why is he a Grand Slam? Like, what the fuck? Like,
pretty sure he's a 2-time Grand Slam.
He is a 2-time. I believe he's the first 2-time Grand Slam.
Some people get all the luck, man.
And I'm like, what? Is it because he's white? Is it the Aryan thing? Is it? Just to be honest with you, is it because he's got blonde hair, blue eyes? I don't know. I don't even know if he has blue eyes. He looks like he does.
No, because if that was the case, Heidenreich would have done well.
Yeah, but that's just a bit too Nazi. Come on, that man's name is Heidenreich. Like, Reich is in the name. Like,
well, his original gimmick was he was a thawed out German soldier from World War II.
Yeah, you can't give him the gold, man. That's just too much.
No,
that's going too far.
1-on-1 with the Undertaker. Do that for a few months, but he's not having the belt. We're not putting the strap on him.
Okay, so fair enough with The Miz. Like, I will say, after watching WrestleMania, which again was my first WrestleMania. Well, I say first time watching WrestleMania in its entirety, and also, since they started doing it 2 days, watching both and watching them live, which was entertaining, especially considering the Miz Shane Mac show. I'm not laughing at Shane O'Mac for the record. I'm just saying, as someone who's been watching Botchamania probably now for like 5 years, I've been waiting for a good botch on WWE Live, and at Shane's expense, it was fucking interesting to see something go horribly wrong. I was like, oh shit, and like my girlfriend's in bed. It's like 5 a.m. at this point, maybe like 4 or 5 a.m. And I'm like upon the landing, I'm like, oh shit, like
Because until he hits the mat, you don't know what the fuck's happening. You think he slipped or something.
I'm like, oh, he blew his knees or he blew something. I'm like, oh fuck,
It was his
oh
quad.
yeah.
Like the worst injury a wrestler can have.
I was like, oh shit. And then obviously, I think the thing that like I appreciated was the Miz's not lack of reaction. He stayed in character and like, look for ways to like distract. And I was like, fair enough, he's working it. He's working it still. And like his audacity to still like, I suppose like goad at him when he was on the floor. I loved it. I was like, fair enough. Like he knows this guy's probably in great pain, but he's still got to put on a show. So he's just like, yeah, what you get is what you get.
Which would have been so much better if Snoop Dogg didn't have the answer for it. If Snoop Dogg didn't like put on the show, there could have been like 4 minutes of Miz just pointing and laughing at a man with a torn quad.
Could have stomped him out for a little bit. Like he's already hurt. Could have just, he could just fake like like the pain. He's already in pain, so he didn't have to sell. Like he just he just got to take a few like bounces and bumps. Like it's fine.
I mean, Shane McMahon is someone we should do this on because you've missed a lot of Shane action. He was the most hated man in wrestling for a while.
I know about that, and I've seen a lot of Shane. Like I saw a lot of Shane McMahon. Obviously, like like most of his like main, because I don't even know when Shane debuted really, but I feel like I've seen most of Shane.
We're gonna wait for that because old Shane was really fucking good.
Yeah, what I don't know, because I feel like in hindsight, it's like Shane would just basically ask Daddy if he could come through and do an extreme match with someone, and Daddy'd be like, "Yeah, sure, who you want?"
Yeah, it was great.
And I'm pretty sure I don't know, like because I assume big name stars are like, well, it's the boss's son, I can't say no, and they had to work with him anyway. And from reports, that pretty much sounds like that was the case, and he was horrible to work with. I haven't seen everything, but I've already heard enough, and like he looks like on highlights. I must say on paper, like in highlights, Shane McMahon looks like a legend.
Yeah, he's like because you're an Arsenal fan. He's like the Olivier Giroud of WWE. He'll score like an overhead kick. He'll do the scorpion flick, score from 40 yards.
Yeah.
But in between those, he's missing touches. He's tripping over the ball. Giroud ain't that bad. He's a legend. But he's not as good as the highlights would tell you.
Yeah.
And that's Shane.
Yeah.
But that's why us kids loved Shane, because we didn't get to watch the whole show.
Yeah.
We just went on YouTube or looked at Sky One in the morning and we saw the best bits.
We saw Shane jumping off ahead of the cell. We saw Shane getting thrown through glass like
3 times.
Shane was interesting. Shane was definitely interesting.
I hate him.
I'm lost on things. I'm like, what? I feel like
we'll kind of push forward in the Miz thing because the Miz, there's the other 700 topics to go through. But
no, we'll get onto the main. The main topic is the big one. The big one.
Oh, of course.
Zach doesn't know.
The worst part is the main topic isn't going to come nowhere near as long as this.
Yeah, I know. I realize. Well, I don't know. It can lead to a few things. I know. The dark undertones, dark side.
Just to wrap up on the Miz, immediately after this really interesting thing he does with John Morrison, he wins Money in the Bank.
Oh, like anyone being either forcibly pushed or basically handed a title run without being handed a title run.
Yes, like LA Knight this year when he wins it in front of me. I hope he wins. LA Knight is the tits. I love LA Knight.
What if he doesn't go for the main title though? What if he does a weird one like what is it?
Austin Theory.
Austin Theory and goes for the IC.
If he wins it, it's better than nothing.
Strips Gunther after effect. I'm just trying to like
if it means
pitch stories because I feel like I'm quite good at this.
If it means that Gunther goes for the world title, I will allow it. I would do anything for Imperium. I love Imperium with all of my soul.
It'd be a good run. Because I don't know. I feel like LA Knight jumping to like what? Who would he go for? Who's he dethroning?
Well, I know he's on SmackDown, but he'd probably go for Seth. He's not getting involved in the Bloodline
exactly. Like
storyline.
I'm sorry, but like he's not winning Money in the Bank and being the man to dethrone Roman. I'm
who's
sorry.
Who's going to do it in there? Shinsuke? I could see Damian Priest doing it, maybe.
No.
He had a great match with Seth the other week on Raw.
Yes. I'd say now we're doing predictions, but yeah, I'd say Shinsuke. But anyway, back to Money in the Bank. So
Miz wins Money in the Bank.
Who did he beat for?
Have a guess. It was a big name.
It's like Brock. Was it John?
No. It was a bit before. But this was 2011. Brock didn't come back till 2012.
So John, Big John,
other John, Randy Orton.
Oh.
He's the other John in my eyes because they were the two guys.
I was like, what? I was like, is his name John?
No, big match Randy.
Yeah.
Randall Keith. That was November 2010. Goes through a main events WrestleMania against John Cena and wins because he fell out of the ring and got a concussion. The match got counted out. And then The Rock got in and rock bottomed John Cena and put The Miz over him. The Miz was the third character in a two-man match.
Wow.
Yeah. How do you feel now?
Dirty.
All of a sudden, The Miz is over in your head. You can kind of see why people got a little bit of a soft spot for Miz. Because he finished the match with a concussion. He did well.
Yeah, like I've always got respect for that. I actually am gonna get round to what I'm basically trying to do. I'm trying to like timeline this is why we need to record more of these because I'm trying to like do a mass catch up because I'm not watching weekly. Like I stupidly have been like speed running like months of Raw where I basically like just skip through matches, skip to like things that I know I want to see. And I basically am watching like 4 episodes of Raw in like the space of like an hour and a half, and then like working my way up to like an event, or maybe just like watching one match at an event and then like skipping to the next Raw, just so I can like fast like speed run the storyline. I'm basically just trying to get a scope of the storylines, like because finding out who wins is easy enough, and like I'm only watching matches that like not to sound snobby, but like if I actually think the wrestling will be worth watching. You know, and I've really gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm only really caring to watch the more technical wrestlers. Like, I really don't really care for the heavyweights that often. Like, you know, I'm going to touch on it now. I really hate watching Triple H wrestle. Like, I can't stand the man.
I get what you mean because he's very slow,
stiff. I hate how he sells being groggy. It's so annoying. He does this thing where he's like on his tiptoes. He does this.
Yeah, like he's just trying. Like it's like a red panda.
Like, what are you doing, man? Like, it's like it doesn't even make sense. You're defying the laws of physics every 2 seconds. Like, just standing on tiptoes for some reason. I'm like, that's not what happens when you've been punched in the face.
That's what happens when you spend a whole like childhood worshipping Ric Flair. you defy gravity and you just slowly tumble on your face. But he doesn't have the fucking capacity of Ric Flair.
Yeah.
No one does. We love Ric Flair.
Anyway, we got to stop doing this. Anyway, so well, I suppose yeah, like with that, I think I sort of trying to make a point about like things with the Miz. I'm going to get round to watching like things later because like I said, I'm a speed running through, and I will get round. It will take a long time because I'm currently on 2004. I probably will jump ahead to like later times because like I'm now seeing things that I do remember. literally getting to the point where Edge comes back, and I remember Edge winning Money in the Bank and going on to win. Like I remember that run
Yeah.
because it was the first Money in the Bank as well.
It was so big. It was like nowadays when someone wins Money in the Bank, it would sprint out, get it done with, fucking win.
I think that's the only thing about the gimmick. I will say that about Money in the Bank. I think after it was done like once or twice, like the first time was like, you know, the big one. It was like, oh shit, how's this actually going to work? And people were like, oh right, you just cash it in after someone's had a big match and is tired and battered.
Yeah.
And then like, for me, what's baffling is like, what this has happened now, what 18, 19 times?
Yeah. I think it might be more, you know.
Well,
the
if we
first
then
one was
start adding,
2005.
if we start adding the women's Money in the Bank cash-ins, but what my point being, like the gimmick of the cash-in, it's almost like I've previously said about other gimmicks. It's like it hits a point where like, how many times, how many spins and twists can we put on this, or is it just become this formulaic thing? And it's like outside of the cash-in, I suppose it then just becomes like the Money in the Bank concept is just like a guaranteed title run. Which they, you know, fair enough. They don't even try and like disguise that. They pretty much say that now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
guaranteed title. Like, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind, you know, if they change things up just a little bit, or find a way to change it up.
I mean, changing things up is like in terms of like adding rules, in terms of like saying you can do it anytime, but like that kind of thing. Because for me, I kind of appreciate the whole Austin Theory getting the US title thing from this. Because his US title run has been going on for what, like 8 months? It's a good run.
Yeah.
It's been a good run. But more importantly, he was on a massive downward spiral character-wise. And character-wise, for him to go for the US title, like at lowest confidence, it opens more options. There's more chances to have different stories. But also it makes sense. Like if fucking, let's say, Zach Gowen won Money in the Bank, he's not going to go and fight Brock Lesnar for the title unless he's been hit by a truck. Whereas, would he go and fight Rey Mysterio after a match? Probably. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like what I'm interested in now with this one is like, having only been like watching since like Royal Rumble, I feel like the lineup for this Money in the Bank, because you know, behind the kayfabe is like, it seems weird that anyone would go from Money in the Bank to then challenging Seth, because I was like, I feel like if anything now, Seth can stop doing these random like challenge matches that he's been doing for the last like year or whatever, and start actually getting to a new rivalry over a new belt.
Yeah.
And develop an actual new story, which could be interesting, because I feel like now that's on Raw sort of needs that now that they're putting the bloodline thing on SmackDown only.
Which is a good thing. Thank fuck.
So it would only really make sense to not have anyone from this Money in the Bank lineup, because also at the same time, no one's going from this to end Roman's reign.
No, not at all.
It'd be so stupid, and the people involved aren't the people to end Roman's reign.
There is the bonus that you have it for a year. I have also had the horrible thought that what if Cody won at Mania and then someone cashed in on him? But there is also the missing option of, I don't think all of the entrants have been announced.
Isn't it just one person?
It's going to be Drew. It's going to be Drew McIntyre. It's in London.
Yeah.
But even then, the chance has gone. Clash at the Castle. It should have been then. Don't get Tyson Fury out to have a sing-song with him. Give him the fucking belt.
Give him the fucking belt.
Seriously. Drew McIntyre carried that fucking company through his back during lockdown. And he didn't even get to win anything in front of a live crowd. He lost to Lashley at the next WrestleMania. He lost at this year's WrestleMania.
He did have like the best match though.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the best match at Mania.
Absolutely. Absolutely fucking agree. Mainly because Gunther's in it. But
I just felt like it was really well balanced as well. Like,
yeah.
you know, I always find triple threats are very sticky. Like I feel like they, they're very formulaic because you can't just have any like three guys wailing on each other at once. It's always like someone gets thrown out, blah blah blah. Then keep going. But the way they sort of like, I feel like the last like 3 minutes of it was so well done.
It's that big crescendo that happens at the end. And it could just be a case where like you have that famous episode of SmackDown where everyone hits their finishers. You could do that. Or you could actually have just a nice little bow on the creme brulee of chaos.
Yeah,
That is
because even the US title one was sick as well. The US title triple threat. Was that Mania? No, that was
no.
Backlash. I think
Was that was him, Theory, Lashley, and was it Bronson Reed?
Is that his name? Big guy.
Big guy, long hair. Yeah.
That was another good triple threat. I was surprised.
I do have a very good triple threat match for you to watch, which I think would be a nice little a nice segment out of all 700 of them.
Okay.
Zach's review of a match. But I'll message you that in good time so we don't get lost. But that's The Miz, or at least the first 6 years of his career.
God, you're trying to convert me. Fucking Miz.
If you there's a reason I'm leaving it at that WrestleMania match. I mean, I could tie in the whole. He had a storyline with The Rock and Cena where he teamed with R-Truth. It was fine. It was serviceable. But I think where we're leaving it is where he kind of got people's respect. And kind of where people were just like, you could probably do more with this guy.
Okay.
Never watched the match, though. Never watched John Cena versus The Miz. Or in fact, that whole WrestleMania, because it's potentially the worst WrestleMania ever.
People are so dramatic, though. Like, people are very dramatic.
The best match on the card was CM Punk Randy Orton, and it lasted like 7 minutes.
I don't think a quick match is a bad match, necessarily. I just feel like if there's going to be someone getting absolutely squashed, then it should at least have a good lead up. And what I mean, a lead up to the match.
As in, like, the build, over, throughout each Raw, for example. Yeah. Especially when it makes it a surprise.
Genuinely, just throwing it out there with the Cody Brock thing, I actually wouldn't have minded it if it was the other way around. If the first meet up, Brock absolutely destroyed him because he already had beaten the shit out of him and basically like asserted dominance. Cody got dumb, cocky, called him out, and then just gets battered because he's never faced Brock before, and then gets his rematch and then wins.
I can understand that.
Would have been more fun. Would have made more sense. Would be more of a development because now we're at a point where like, well, you lost last time, so now you're walking out on an L, and I don't want to see you guys fight a third time. Like it's played out. I know. I get what they're probably looking to do. I'm just
have you heard the stipulation that's being rumored?
Well, I imagine. Well, I was going to just predict now that like they're going to leave it. Cody gets a title somewhere in the next year, and Brock's the one that takes it from him. Doing a sort of Brock's the final boss to people thing, like they do. They do with a lot of people, like almost like plant the seed. Yeah, he's the hurdle that he needs to overcome later on, and they'll build it up. Like, yeah, remember you didn't really beat Brock that time.
Wait, have you ever played Skyward Sword? Zelda.
Yeah, it's the last Zelda game I actually played.
You know Girahim.
Yeah,
Brock is Girahim.
Fuck's sake!
Like he just turns up every few minutes. You didn't really beat me.
No, I'm so surprised by that comparison.
Listen, they may not look alike, they may not act alike, but you know what I mean.
No, I do get it. It's funny. Brock is Girahim. Like, of course.
It was right in front of us the whole time. I don't even know who Demise is. Fucking, it's probably Roman actually, but I kind of got the idea that it was leading up to SummerSlam. They'll have the third match at SummerSlam. Your idea still might come in future. Like, if they did like a WrestleMania next year, which I'd fucking love. I would honestly love Cody versus Seth again. Cody, Seth again, but Seth needs to fucking win this time. But the rumor is that it's going to be a Texas Bull Rope match.
Why?
I don't know. But I could imagine in terms of like getting creative in terms of Brock's power moves, it would be quite fun. I think both of them want to be protected enough where they're not going to do a fucking dog collar match. Gotta stop saying But Cody's going to win. And it's probably going to lead to, say, Survivor Series. And that's where he'll get the title. This is the reaction that happens when you put off Roman dropping the belt for like a year.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think with the Roman dropping the belt thing, it's like, let's be honest. I think as much as they probably have wanted to, and I do get it, I do respect it. It's somewhat necessary when you have something that's like essentially is scripted, but I get that they want to like almost have some new landmarks in the history. It's almost like all these records can't just be from like a million years ago. Like, imagine like we get like 100 years down the line, like like there's these epic records that there's no footage of because it's from a bygone era. Like, I get it, I do get it. Like, people want to be able to like see the 1,000-day records.
Yeah.
I get it, but at the same time, in this modern day, it's very hard with everything we said before about like things being potentially played out, especially dropping titles. Dropping titles, like it's been done a million times because that's the nature of the business. But you've now worked up this streak, you've worked up this legacy, you've worked up this character. You fucking worked this annoying angle where he cheats to win too much, and now it's getting irritating. You've done all this, and now it's like, okay, so what's the ending? Like, basically, this is almost like the Roman Reigns ending is pretty much like Avengers Endgame at this point. It's like once he hits the record, that's the Infinity War. Like that's the event that we've all been waiting for. We've been building it up. It's like, yeah, okay, he's done it. He's got the Infinity Stones. Okay, how does it end? How do we now we've worked this huge thing up? How do you end it without it almost looking stupid? And the answer is fuck knows.
Yeah, so we'll kill him in the first 5 minutes.
We can't do time travel with this one. So
we go back in
time. The Avengers analogy all the way.
I don't blame you. Fucking, I know how Avengers fans feel. But maybe to an extent, time travel is the answer. Not literally, but if we go back in time to how this storyline started, who did it start with? It was Jey Uso. What if Jey Uso fucking beat him?
I don't know, because I haven't watched enough Jey Uso to care. This is the problem with my ignorance. Like, you're gonna get carried away, and I'm gonna be like, listen, man, I know who the Usos are. I know that they're supposed to be like the greatest tag teams ever, which is even more jarring when you say Jey Uso is like a former WWE champion. And
he's not.
Is he not? I thought he had held the title.
No, he hasn't. And I'm also at the point where I'm kind of questioning if it was Jimmy Uso he fought now. But
okay, I thought Jey had won it.
No, neither of them won it. They've won loads of. Neither of the Usos have held a solo title.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Treat yourself.